To order. First thing on the agenda is a roll call. Manager Waller.
Yes.
Manager Wynant.
Here.
Manager Bradley.
Here.
Manager Wagaman.
Here.
And Manager Priner here. And the next thing is to set the agenda. Anybody like to add or change the agenda today?
Staff have no changes, President Priner.
Thank you. With that, I'll need a motion.
I'll move approval. Marcy.
Bradley seconds.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Oh, roll call. Waller.
Aye. Yes.
Wynant. Bradley.
Yes.
Yep.
Wagaman.
Yes.
And Priner, yes. Approval of the minutes.
Madam President, move to approve the minutes for the July 6th, 2020 workshop.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Manager Waller.
Yes.
Manager Wynant.
Yes.
Manager Bradley.
Yes.
Manager Wagaman.
Yes.
And Manager Priner, yes. Motion passes. July 8th.
Madam President, move to approve the July 8th, 2020 regular meeting minutes. Second.
We have a motion and a second by Waller. Any further discussion? Manager Waller.
Yes.
Manager Wynant.
Yes.
Manager Bradley.
Yes.
Manager Wagaman.
Yes.
And Manager Priner, yes. Okay. So the first thing is the consent agenda. Lauren?
Good
Any
morning,
questions?
President Priner, Board of Managers. For your consideration today is one water quality grant application on the consent agenda, which the application itself starts on page 20 in your packets, and it's the first Washington County application we've seen this year.
Oh, good. Okay, anybody have any questions for Lauren?
Mrs. Bradley, I've got a question.
Go ahead.
And I raised this previously with staff. Matamidi owes 7,130 cubic feet from past linear projects. Should we be using this project to offset that amount?
Okay.
Manager Bradley, if I may, the city hasn't made a request to do that with this project. And this project we've actually been working with the city and Washington Conservation District on since 2019. So it was before we really brought the debit back to the forefront. So I think it'd be probably more appropriate to wait for them to make a request to use it towards their debit, which they haven't yet. But we could certainly have a conversation with them about that.
Well, it seemed to me that here's an opportunity.
Yep.
And we ought to at least have that conversation. And then if they turn it down, that would affect any vote I might have on a future request for forgiveness.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well then we can, go ahead, Nick.
President Priner, I was just going to note that one of the items that the board might want to consider in that is the skin in the game, if you will, for a cost share project. And if that changes the amount you might want to participate in a cost share. As to the letters that we sent out to those cities and one county that had debit, the Anoka County, the only county with a debit, did respond that they were going to move forward and address the debit based on the letter we sent. They had said that previously, but they'll look at a future project. And part of the positioning that they're considering is they don't want to align it with a, just to get it done and get it off the book sort of thing, and in a bigger structure of how their stormwater maintenance and other obligations kind of fit together. So that's one entity with a debit making a comment about how they're going about it. Haven't heard from the other cities at all. I just thought I'd share that as some of the context of where we're at. Later, I think I picked mid to late August for given a time frame for those other cities to respond. Each one can be uniquely different, and I presume that you'll weigh the potential forgiveness of the debit based on which each one says. I think that brings us full circle back to Manager Bradley, and has the city contemplated this? Should we ask them that question?
Madam President, this is Manager Wagaman. I think we should at least ask. I mean, there's no harm in at least getting the cities thinking about it and kind of bringing it to the forefront. That doesn't mean that there isn't a valid reason why they wouldn't want to use it on this project or something, but I don't think it hurts to be bringing it up to them.
Lauren, how would that affect their timeline?
They are, I believe, on a tight timeline, just with their road reconstruction schedule. Brian could probably provide a little bit more information on that, but it was delayed. The application was delayed in getting to us because of some issues with the bidding process. There was an initial bid that was much too high, and it had to be rebid to get some more appropriate costs. So it is, I think, tighter than it would normally be. Brian, are you there? Can you comment on that? Or do you have more information from the city?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, well, what I know is that it is a pretty tight timeline. They had already, I believe construction has already started for the majority of the linear project itself. And so I think if this were to be postponed another month, I don't know if the contractor would be available to do it at that time. Because I don't know the contractor's exact timeline, but it sounds like they were ready to go on this as soon as this gets approved. So if this were to actually go through and make it.
Well, I think that we should just move ahead with this motion. And then if they want to come back to us, we can certainly relook at the situation.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we could mess up their timeline for construction. I don't want to do that.
There's no harm in that, Pat, not Bradley, in my opinion. I still think, regardless, we should ask them if this is an appropriate opportunity and get a response from them. And like I say, if the answer is no, then that'll affect my view on a future request for forgiveness.
Yeah, it might just be the timing for them, but that's the situation we're in. So somebody please make a motion on page 20. Let's have more questions.
Madam Chair,
Mhm.
This is Chuck. Just a question for Manager Bradley, just to be clear, is the question whether Matamidi should request credit against the debit in addition to receiving the district's cost share or in lieu of receiving the district's cost share contribution?
Bradley, I have no idea. I don't know what the math is of this project. I don't know if they could both occur. I am not opposed to them both occurring.
Okay.
So, Madam President, I'll make the motion here to approve the water quality grant contract W2001 up to $9,637.50 and not to exceed 75% of the eligible project expenses in accordance with the Rice Creek Watershed District staff's recommendation and established program guidelines.
Manager Wagaman, second.
Manager Wagaman, second. Any further discussion?
So I have a question here, Madam President. I'm not opposed to asking the city if this could be used for their debit issue. I think that's a good idea that Manager Bradley brought up. But then it makes me wonder if situations like this that have occurred in the past that haven't been looked at, for many of the cities would Manager Bradley entertain if his first proposal works out that we could use these credits against the debit. Would you think about looking at some of the past history in the other cities? Maybe there are some programs we've missed, like, I don't know.
I'm not looking forward to going back and trying to undo whatever we've done, but it's bad timing, John, and I happen to have the work papers on my desk from the meeting where I knew that 7,130 cubic feet. Otherwise, this would have slid right under my nose and I would never have seen it. So this may be something that the city of Matamidi say, no, we already have a project in the works. Or they might say, no, economics are this. If I have to do that, I can't do the project. There may be lots of good reasons why we should still go ahead with this. And maybe because of timing, we have to, but we should at least ask.
Oh, yeah, I don't object to asking, Mike. I was just looking at, when I saw it say curb cuts, I thought, well, there's quite a bit of that goes on. For example, over in Mounds View, they had a lot of using curbs over there, or the ditches, and so Mounds View had a large debit. So I don't know if we've ever used that against their debit credit. That's why your idea intrigued me.
Well, I think it's a good idea, but it has to be done before the application's not afterwards, because it's kind of too late to refigure it out. So,
President,
okay, go ahead.
President Reiner, to Manager Waller's statement about Mounds View, the city of Mounds View, in fact, proposed the rain gardens for that very purpose, as a way to address the historic debit that they had based on a project that fell through for them. And they said, for each of our road projects coming forward through multiple years, it was 5+ years, every time they did a road project, they decided to use rain gardens to address that debit. And that is put them in the balanced location they are now.
Okay, any further discussion? We're going to call a vote. Manager Waller?
Yes.
Manager Wine?
Yes.
Manager Bradley?
Yes.
Manager Wageman?
Yes.
And I say yes. So the motion passes and they can get going on their project. Okay, open mic. Is there anybody
Thank
else we aren't aware of? Anybody? Okay, we're going to go items requiring board action. Consider Ramsey County Ditch 4, page 37. Kyle?
All right. Great. Madam President, members of the board, thank you again for continuing the discussion on this project. We've been working with the district's engineer and Attorney Kolb for quite some time in partnership with the city of Roseville to explore converting about 2,500 linear feet of Ramsey County Ditch 4 from open ditch to a piped condition between County Road C and Terrace Drive. Kind of continuing our discussion from the July 6th board workshop, we have a final draft of a cooperative agreement between Rice Creek Watershed District and the city of Roseville for your consideration today. It's one of a few items that we're asking you to consider related to moving this project forward. Based on direction staff received from that workshop, we have prepared the cooperative agreement similarly as it was presented on July 6th. We would be sharing the construction.
Exiting.
Oh, Brian's gone. We would be sharing the construction cost of the project with the city, such that the Watershed District share would not exceed $1,090,000. Of that, $450,000 would come from the RCD4 Water Management District, and $640,000 from district-wide ad valorem levy. I'll be clear that is related to the construction cost of the project. We do have some additional costs that would be borne by the district on our own, namely Houston Engineering's task order to prepare plans and specifications, and maybe any other minor staffing or legal costs that would relate to the project. So with that, we have a planned water management district charge, I believe, of $450,121. That's been identified in Houston Engineering's preliminary RCD4 WMD charge memo. That memo will be updated to a final version as we move towards a proposed public hearing that would take place on August 26th. I believe that's the date, 2020. I want to be clear that public hearing that we are proposing would cover not only the district's establishment of charges for the RCD4 Water Management District, but also the district's generation and use of ad valorem levy to fund this project under 103B. So it'll be a kind of a multi-purpose hearing in that regard. Make sure I'm catching everything here I want to run by you. Houston's task order is included in the packet here, which we would be authorizing them to prepare plans and specifications for construction of the project. That would happen fairly soon. The one notable difference is that given that the city of Roseville will be letting this project and acting as project owner for bidding and construction, we will be using Roseville's kind of front end of their specification, their standard specifications. And so that, which I believe their template has been provided to Houston already for use in these specifications. In that task order.
Sorry.
Oh, I was saying
Patrick had his hand up. Did you have a question or comment? Patrick? No? Okay.
Oh, okay.
Finish off. Sorry, Kyle.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay.
technical issues. I don't know why it was
okay.
raised.
Very sounds good.
And Houston's task order is drafted with a total cost of $38,750. On page 39 of your packet, then I've got a summary of staff recommendations and proposed motions for the board, 3 of each. Again, we're looking for the board to consider or to approve the attached cooperative agreement with the city of Roseville. My understanding is that Roseville will be considering this agreement at their July 27th city council meeting next week. We're asking for approval of Houston Engineering Task Order 2020-10 in an amount of $38,750, and then asking the board to order a public hearing for allocation of cost to and establishment of charges for the RCD4 Water Management District. And that would be held on August 26th, 2020 during our regularly scheduled board meeting. Again, additional note that's not in my memo is that public hearing will also be noticed to cover our obligations under 103B for the use of ad valorem funds. With that, open to any questions that the board may have on this.
Questions for Kyle?
Madam President, you will recall during the workshop that I had a concern about the additional $40,000 that the city asked for a 10-year cost of maintaining lateral 1. And having now had a chance to study the proposed contract with the city, my concerns have been solidified. When I go, it's on page 42. I go to paragraph section B 9A. District's RCD 4 water management district shall contribute the first $450,000 project. I think that should be $490,000 in recognition of avoided maintenance costs attributable to the project. So the reason we were going to justify giving them $40,000 for lateral 1 was because we were going to avoid maintenance of lateral 1. So that $40,000, hold on before you respond. That $40,000 is either, in my opinion, a city stormwater system cost, which frankly is not a reasonable thing for us to be paying for, but was willing to do it for the benefit of the project. But it certainly is not something that we should be paying for as an ad valorem cost. And we go into section B. The district shall contribute additional ad valorem tax at 32% of the remaining project costs. That would change, not to exceed $640,000. I think it should be $600,000 in recognition of the sediment and nutrient reduction value, avoided future maintenance costs. If we're going to pay them the money, it's not an avoided future maintenance cost. It has no business being included here as an ad valorem. And Madam President, I don't know my proper way to do this, but I think my proper way to do it is at the right time to make a motion that we amend this contract to make the Water Management District Fund amount of $490,000 and to make the ad valorem cost $600,000.
That's your motion?
Yes, please.
Do we hear a second?
I would second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second with Marcy. Now discussion. Kyle? Oh, go ahead, John.
Madam President, as in the workshop, I don't agree with this motion. I think that $40,000 cost is something that should be paid for by the ad valorem taxes. It's basically for the taking a look at it with the TV cameras to see what kind of shape it's in. I think it's reasonable. I thought that Kyle brought a very good explanation for it, with the $40,000 being what the television camera is. It isn't for anything that's above the 40,000. It just goes for an inspection. And so they have 10 years to do this inspection. They could do it right away, but whatever they find from the inspection, not the cost of the district. So I think that that's reasonable that you to pay for the cost of the inspection prior to the transfer out of ad valorem taxes, because general taxes or ad valorem taxes are the way we pay for minor maintenance, and this inspection would be a minor maintenance issue process. Thank you.
Marcy, you seconded your opinion, please.
Well, as I'm reading this cooperative agreement, this change that Mike had suggested doesn't impact the total that goes to the city. So I think that this could be an easy edit to the cooperative agreement. And Mike's logic makes some sense to me. Of course, I don't know the history of all of how money ends up getting shuffled, but we did have a discussion about this previously, and I landed it.
Okay, thank you. Chuck, anything to add? What does that change? Chuck?
Muted.
There you go.
He's muted. Chuck is muted.
Yes, I'm sorry.
There you go.
I'm just looking through the document to understand exactly what the edit would be. I've not been involved in the drafting of this or the negotiated concept, but so perhaps I'm afraid I'm not of immediate use here.
I can, Madam President, I can add to that a bit. Though I think the one difference that I do want to note, and the last thing I want to do is pick on Manager Bradley, but so what we're
Why?
But so the one thing I do want to point out here, there is a difference between the project capital P as identified in section 9A and the transfer of lateral 1 and other portions of the main trunk of RCD4 to the city of Roseville. The project capital P, as identified in this agreement, is just the placement of 2,500 linear feet of the ditch into a pipe, the actual construction. And so when we look at 9A, and it talks about the $450,000 in recognition of avoided maintenance cost attributable to the project, that's what we're talking about there. In 9B, it talks about, in this case, $640,000 in recognition of multiple things, some of that being avoided future maintenance costs of other portions of RCD4 being transferred to the city, which would be not only lateral 1, but the upper reaches of the main trunk south of the project capital P. And again, it is those, I would, based on the district's past direction on use of ad valorem funds for minor maintenance, as Manager Waller indicated, that is why we placed that avoided maintenance cost into the ad valorem pot. The city made a request as we were negotiating, the initial terms of the draft agreement for the additional $40,000 based on their assessment of inspection and potential future maintenance costs over the next 10 years on the lateral and also portions of the main trunk upstream of the project. And again, we felt that was a a legitimate ask on the part of the city, being that if they want to inspect it, if there is maintenance costs there, if we don't transfer those systems to the city, we would undertake those maintenance costs, and it would be through ad valorem funding based on current district policy. So we added it in here, and that's why. So I just wanted to point that out.
So Madam President,
Go ahead.
so Kyle, so I understand that what you did was you combined two different steps here. You have the project step, which has a definition to it, and you have the transfer step, which is a second, and you've combined the two of them in the same document. And that's all I see that's been done here. Am I incorrect in assuming that that's what you are trying to show?
Yeah, Madam President, to Manager Waller's question, in some ways, yes. We set this is a cooperative agreement, so this governs future actions, if you will. Part of this document does refer to future proceedings to transfer portions of this drainage system to the city. This document itself does not effectively complete that transfer. That would be something that is done post construction of the project, capital P. We want to get that done first. And so, yes, in a way, it does do that. And again, in recognition of that future transfer, that small portion of the funding is incorporated here. I hesitate to say out of simplicity, but we tried to reference the reasoning for that funding in the agreement.
Okay, Mike has a motion on the table. Marcy's the second. Any further discussion? Waller?
Are you calling for the vote, Madam President?
Calling for the vote, yes.
I vote no on the current motion.
Okay, Manager Wynant?
Yes.
Manager Bradley?
Yes.
Manager Wagaman?
I don't know. I'm going to say no on this, and I would like to say the only reason I agree completely with Manager Bradley's thinking on it, but after listening to Kyle, I am going to vote no.
And I'm going to vote no. So Manager Bradley, I'm sorry, but your motion did not pass, but thank you for bringing everything up.
Manager Bradley is not sorry. He felt obligated to
That's right.
make a pitch on behalf of his representation of Ramsey County as a whole.
Okay, so on page 2, we have 3 motions proposed. Would somebody like to go ahead and start making the motions?
Madam President, based on our past discussion here, I move to approve the attached cooperative agreement between Rice Creek Watershed District and the City of Roseville for the construction, operation, and maintenance of Ramsey County Ditch 4 Water Management Project 2020-01, authorizing the board president to execute the agreement.
A second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on motion number 1? We call for a vote. Manager Waller?
Yes.
Manager Wynant?
Yes.
Manager Bradley?
Yes.
Manager Wagaman?
Yes.
And Manager Farner, yes. Motion passes. Okay, number 2.
Madam President, I move, this is Marcy, I move to approve the Houston Engineering Inc. request for services with a total cost of $38,750 as defined in the task order 2020-010 dated July 10th, 2020, authorizing the board president to execute the document.
Manager Wagaman, second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? The roll call. Manager Waller?
Yes.
Manager Wynant?
Yes.
Manager Bradley?
Yes.
Manager Wagaman?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, number 3.
Madam President, I move to direct the administrator to schedule and duly notice a public hearing for the allocation of costs to and establishment of charges for the Ramsey County Ditch 4 Water Management District to be held on August 26, 2020 during the district's regularly scheduled board meeting.
President Priner?
Yes. Wait, we need
Mark-
we need a second. Before we
Bradley
have,
seconds.
okay, we have a second. Go ahead, Nick.
President Priner, managers, Marcy, will that also include the 103B requirements? Kyle had noted to include that as part of that public hearing.
Yes, thank you. I include that.
I accept that as a second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Roll call, Manager Waller,
Yes.
Manager Winant,
Yes,
Manager Bradley,
Yes.
and Manager Wagaman.
Yes.
And I say yes, so the motion passes. Anything else, Kyle, we need to know on this?
Whew, I hope not.
Okay.
Madam President, Kyle, I thought you did a very good job on this, even though it's, caused some confusion by combining the two together, but getting that transfer is an important accomplishment.
We have many steps yet to go, Manager Waller, so we
I know, but
we
this
will
was
proceed accordingly.
this was a big giant step forward, Captain, may I?
Okay, number 2, items requiring board action, a check register.
Madam President, I move to approve the check register dated July 22nd, 2020 in the amount of $276,714.79 prepared by Redpath and Company.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second by Bradley. Any further discussion? Manager Waller,
Yes.
Manager Winant,
yes,
Manager Bradley,
Yes.
Manager Wagaman,
Yes.
and I say yes, so it passes. Okay, discussion and information. Anna Grace.
Hello.
Yes.
Just gonna turn my video on here. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. So I'll try and share my screen here quick. One second here. Aha, there it is. Sorry. Okay. So it's my full screen here. Can everyone see it?
Yes, I can.
yes.
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 Yep.
Perfect. All right. So, well, hello again, everyone. Good morning. My name is Anna Grace, and I am a regulatory technician at Rice Creek Watershed District. So today I will be presenting to further the link between the Board of Managers and the RCWD staff. So thank you to the Board of Managers for creating a time and space for the staff to further describe who we are and then the work that we do at Rice Creek.
Well, thank you, and I apologize for last time having to move the agenda.
No worries, gotta go with the flow, no worries. So for today, for our outline, the presentation will be structured into the following categories. So we'll start off by going just a little bit into my background. Then we'll move on to my role as a regulatory technician and kind of walk through my day-to-day operations. Then we'll move on to challenges that I've experienced thus far, and then we'll end with a looking forward section. So throughout the presentations, I do have pictures from the Rice Creek Watershed District, but I also have included pictures that I've personally taken as I love being outside, and I thought this would be kind of a fun aspect to share. So this picture over here is actually taken from where I live in Maple Grove, and it's Eagle Lake. And then this picture as well is from Eagle Lake. It's a really beautiful area. I love being over there. So to go into my background, I graduated from the University of Minnesota from the College of Food, Agriculture, and Natural Resource Sciences with a major in Sustainable Systems Management. So the theme of the major is pretty easy to pull from the title. It was regarding sustainable systems. So topics included resource consumption, so fossil fuel versus renewable energy, and then how do we work to create a closed loop system? So with that, looking at life cycle analysis, trying to figure out which systems are the most efficient from cradle to grave, So this would include from resource extraction all the way to disposal. So this also included waste management. Are we going to landfill, compost, recycle, waste to energy as well? And then topics also included our water quality and soil health, just how our daily practices affect our water quality. So avenues for this included agriculture practices, and then also urban runoff pollution, and then ways to combat and prevent these issues. So while I was attending the university, I was also a teaching assistant for the Sustainable Housing Community Environment and Technology course. So this was an online course that was offered to 60 undergraduate students. So my role was to grade papers, reflections, and forums, and then to also help the professor out with any course organization and updates. So topics for this included, again, energy systems, green infrastructure, which would be like LEED building certification, where not to build, so the floodplain, and then highly susceptible erosion areas. Water resource topics also included aquifer depletion and replenishing rates, green landscaping techniques to aid in runoff pollution and erosion control. So going into the best management practices for urban and farm landscapes, such as rain gardens, floating ecosystems, permaculture, and things along those lines. And then before starting at Rice Creek, I was previously employed at the environmental nonprofit, the Great Plains Institute. So there I worked under the Transportation and Fuels Division. First, I was a research intern for the Bioeconomy Coalition. I compiled research on cover crops and native prairie grasses. So the soil and water quality benefits of diverse planting in agriculture are well known, but without regulation, farmers will mainly look to monetary incentives to plant different crop systems. So my role was to research market avenues for such things as bioenergy, food, feed, also kind of bioplastics, and then looking at also the adoption rates for farmers. So is it easy to farm? What's the yield data? And then compiling that information and making a conclusion about what was the nearest term towards realistic market adoption. And then while also working at the Great Plains Institute, I worked into more administrative support for the Transportation and Fuels Division. So this included the Bioeconomy Coalition again, but then it also included their Drive Electric initiatives. So my duties in this role were to schedule meetings, kind of prep for the meetings, and then to also do the note taking. And then I also updated their social media software, and then their donor relationship and outreach software. So then moving on to March of 2020, I started at Rice Creek. So the definition here in the orange was pulled directly from our 2020 Watershed Management Plan. So the purpose of this program is to implement the rules of the district through the receipt and review of permit applications and issuance of permits to ensure that regulated projects fully demonstrate compliance with district rules. So how we kind of interpret this would be the regulatory program is serving the communities in the district by equally administering rules to protect water resources. So staff work with applicants throughout the permitting process to provide the knowledge and tools necessary to meet RCWD rules and regulations. So then moving on to my role, so I work within the regulatory program, and my main duty is permit intake. So with these, my main roles would be to respond to permit inquiries and then also permit application intake review. So to start with responding to permit inquiries, so we have various questions come in quite frequently. It could be a brief project description, you know, do I need a permit for this? Can I do this in my backyard? Can you take a look at my site plan and see, you know, which permit I will need? And then we also have sometimes it's consultants looking for more information on maybe a past stormwater BMP, or sometimes it's homeowners that are looking to purchase a property and they're wondering if, you know, we have any previous wetland delineations for a site. So in each of these scenarios, I create a review file, and then I do a review of the location on our GIS system. And then this system allows me to check for any permitting red flag, so wetland or floodplain. And then it also shows the historic files for the site, which then I review to provide further information. Then moving on to the permit application intake review. So this is when an application has formally been submitted to the district. So the initial steps are just to ensure that the provided application has submitted the required items for it to be deemed complete to move on to the review process. So this alleviates the time that the reviewer has to spend requesting materials, and instead they can spend the time ensuring that the application is compliant with our rules. So for example, one of my on my checklist is to ensure that the application has the correct landowner signature, which might seem straightforward, but it's often an incomplete item, I find, as some properties are in the stages of being purchased or transferred. So my role is to get all the materials together for the reviewers so that they aren't spending the extra time requesting them. So as we know, Rice Creek, we deal with both big and small projects. So intake duties require speaking with applicants who are perhaps an engineering consultant, a general contractor, a landscaper, or a landowner. So they all have the same goal of let's get this permit issued, but they're going to have varying permit requirements and then varying knowledge base of the required materials we're requesting. So we want to administer the rules fairly, but we also want to work with the applicants accordingly. So my role is to make the intake process easy to understand for all the applicants. So for example, I've found that smaller projects require more guidance and communication. So I'm just here to help with any initial questions and concerns and then get them onto the review process in a timely manner. So we want to make the process smooth as possible and then provide as much guidance and information as needed. So to accomplish these tasks, I work mostly with the permit regulatory team. So that's going to be Patrick and Kelsey. Regulatory, though, also includes the RCWD inspectors. That's regarding current and potential violations, and then inspectors also continue the communication for site visits after permit issuance. We also coordinate with Houston Engineering for review, and then correspond with staff regarding if a project's near a public drainage system or district facility, we'd want to notify Tom and Ashley. If it is a potential cost share grant program, Lauren and Marcus as well. So, and then one of my last roles is to complete internal assignments as requested. So a good example is of how we strive to make the permitting process more efficient and user-friendly. Beth, our communication and outreach coordinator, and I are working on updates for our violation documents. So that's the 10-day letter and then the when is a permit required document. So just looking to make adjustments to keep them concise, but also ensure we're including enough information and that they're understandable, readable to the varying levels of background knowledge. So keeping them authoritative, but also striving to be helpful. So moving on to tools. So these are the tools that I use in my day-to-day to accomplish these tasks. So the first one is my initial completeness review checklist, which is featured right here. So when we do have applications come in, this is my checklist that I use. So we kind of discussed earlier is the application form signed by the landowner. So that's on my checklist there. In this scenario, didn't need soil borings, weren't proposing infiltration. So you go through the list here and then look for those red flags of the floodplain, wetlands, and then other aspects to consider, you know, is it near the public drainage system, district facilities, notify Tom and Ashley. And then also adding in those relevant files. Was there a previous wetland delineation done and whatnot there? So this just helps kind of organize for the review staff, but then it also helps me as well to make sure I'm not missing any items. Then we also have our Laserfiche. So this stores all of our permit documents. So everything you see on the checklist here, you would find in Laserfiche. You'd also find any email correspondence, any inspection notes, any fees. So anything from the permit can be found in Laserfiche. So this is helpful for the review of new permits, but then it's also helpful to look when we do have those permit inquiries come in to be able to share information. So it's very important to keep this organized and up to date. Moving on then to our database. So our database further stores information on review and permit files. It's a little bit simpler layout and provides kind of the base information on the file. And then the database is linked to our GIS permit viewer, which you can kind of see here, a couple of the items that you can search. There's also a scroll down menu, quite a few tools on there, but this is the tool that you use to search for any permitting items of concern within the checklist. So, as I mentioned, the permit viewer does have many categories that you can look through, but I wanted to show two aspects that I think are kind of fun and interesting to look at, which would be our floodplain and wetland categories. So on the left here, the regulatory floodplain is indicated by this navy blue outline here. And then from there, we have our cross sections, which are labeled these black lines. We have our detailed hydraulic nodes, which are these green triangles, and then these teal circles, that's our lake level frequency. So each provides various information, and then based on the location of the project, it depends which one you use when you want to look for the 100-year floodplain elevation to provide for applicants. And Houston Engineering actually just went through a model-wide update of these features. So currently we have the most up-to-date data, which is pretty cool. Then moving on to wetland category over here, you can kind of see the varying hues of, we've got different colors of greens and blues here. So this would indicate different types of NWI wetlands or National Wetland Inventory wetlands. And then the two pictures below here are also wetland indicators. So these are our soil. It gives further detail of the soil type and then also its hydric rating. And then on the right here, this is mosquito breeding sites are indicated by this red outline, excuse me. So that would indicate wetter conditions. So this is good for pre-application discussion, but it's also helpful to check the site plans of incoming permits to make sure that any potential wetland impacts are being addressed. And then Patrick and Kelsey, they're also able to just look at an aerial photo and see wetland indicators just from the landscape. So I refer to both of them for their expertise, and then I'm also working to become better at this myself as well. So moving on to the challenges section, as I'm still new to this position, I didn't feel I had the experience or grounds to talk about the overarching challenges of the regulatory program. So I'll speak just to the challenges that I've experienced thus far. So to start, this position is based on the meaningful and necessary watershed district rules to protect and preserve the water resources. So administering the rules fairly, but also remembering this experience people have with the district is also a part of the process. So finding the balance to uphold our rules and creating effective and efficient communication is key. So a challenge that I briefly touched on earlier in some cases is when working with smaller projects where you might be working with the landowner or a landscaper or an excavating company. It's a combination of not providing too much information, but then also breaking down the rules when necessary. So some applicants will just need more help than others. An example of this, when I first started, we had a Rule D erosion and sediment control permit application. And during intake, I was kind of just, using just a similar language to the rules. And then I found I was providing too much information. And I realized the applicant seemed frustrated from their email correspondence. So I decided I needed to call to help discuss and work through things together with the applicant. So in this case, they just needed a little bit more additional instruction and for me to phrase things differently. And then sometimes, especially in email, things can seem a little bit robotic and like a lot of information coming at you. So the applicant appreciated the call and we were able to get on the same page. So per statute 1599, we have 15 business days to respond to permit applications. So once we were on the same page, we were able to send over to the review in 9 business days. So it ended up being it went in a timely manner, but it was a valuable learning experience moving forward that, I'm here to help, but I also need to make sure that I'm doing so effectively for each applicant. So some permit applications are going to need 10 calls and some are just going to need 1. But every permit is going to be different and I need to work with the applicants on their individual needs. So generally now, a rule of thumb I have with smaller projects is if I do have a longer list of incomplete items, I try to get a hold of them through a phone call first to kind of just discuss it together. So it's more of a conversation instead of me just sending an email kind of just saying what I need them to do. So just trying to get off on the right foot and have it be more of a conversation. So moving on to COVID-19, I did start this position with only 2 days in the office before transitioning to working from home full time. So so everyone is adapting to the new normal, and we're in a pandemic and everyone's going through this transition. But I will say it was definitely an interesting way to start a new position. So for training, Patrick and Kelsey have been beyond great, and we found like a nice flow of communication. So we utilize creating Word docs to discuss questions. We have Teams meetings, the messaging tool, and then phone calls as well. And then we also utilize the screen sharing tool, which we're using today in this presentation. And it's a really helpful tool because you're able to pull up a document and, you know, show where you're looking, like, oh, I'm looking over here. What do you think about this? Does the applicant need to provide more information or clarification? Am I on the right track? That kind of stuff. So definitely have had the virtual tools have been helpful as well. So to expand further, I've experienced strong communication with all the RCWD staff. So I'm thankful to have such a great team here. So I haven't had a question thus far that hasn't been answered thoroughly, timely, and very kindly. Everyone I'm finding is just a book of knowledge and is always willing to share and help. So the staff have definitely allowed me to overcome the challenges of starting a new position from home. So I'm incredibly I'm incredibly grateful for them. So then also strong communication, work related, but then just also on like an emotional support level. So I still would get calls and emails just kind of checking in, like, how are you doing, Anna? You know, is everything going well? Is there anything we can do to help? So that's all been really, really wonderful. So then moving forward, we have our looking forward section. This will be my last slide today. So in general, we have our rule revisions coming up. Patrick, I believe today has a presentation for that as well. But looking for the board feedback, and then after final comments, I believe the schedule was to be noticed to public comment period between August and October. So then for personal looking forward, you know, I'm excited to keep learning and growing within this position at RCWD. So Kelsey and I joke that we're kind of the first line investigators. So I put a little investigator guy on there. So just kind of, you know, working to make sure that I'm finding the most relevant files to provide to applicants, and then also making sure during permit application intake review, I don't want to miss any key items. So just want to be the best investigator I can. And then also just expanding further into the rule book. So specifically for Rule C, our stormwater management plan, and then Rule F, our wetland alterations. You know, as we're the local government unit administering WACA, and there's just so much information to expand into. Definitely looking to Nick and Patrick and Kelsey, as there's the experts in the field. So I want to learn as much as I can. And then in general, just I'd like to stay kind of well-rounded on all the RCWD projects and initiatives. Everyone's work is important, so I want to stay as up-to-date as I can on things that are outside of the regulatory program as well. And then I did include pictures here from when I was researching Rice Creek to work there. These were some of the projects that really struck a chord with me. There's many reasons why I wanted to be a part of the team, but here are some of the pictures here. So we have the Fridley Rain Garden project. We have our Blue Thumb program, and then more water quality. This was the Bald Eagle Lake aluminum sulfite project. So that was for water quality for phosphorus. And then also the Oasis Pond Iron Enhanced Sand Filter, also for water quality. And then I believe that was reducing downstream phosphorus by around 35 pounds annually. So that's a really, really huge impact there. And then, as I mentioned, the wetlands section as well. So that concludes my presentation today. I'll kind of open up the floor if there's any questions, but if there's not, just wanted to say thank you again for taking the time to get to know the staff a little bit more, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
I do have a comment and a couple of questions for you. First of all, I agree with picking up the phone. I think that that's what's lost in this whole society, is because how things are said in email isn't necessarily how they're intended.
Yeah.
So it's very good, especially with the initial contact of people, to try to talk to them at least once right away.
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions I had was, you're a new fresh set of eyes. So on our application forms, are you seeing that they're it seemed to me, and I've heard people say that they're not, it's not that they're not complete, but it's a lot of things they don't understand what you're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, I assume you look at them, but maybe you could look at them or somebody can, if the idea is, are they up to date? Are they being what we need today versus what we had for years? So just a thought, I don't know what you're seeing or hearing, but I have heard that they think our application forms are really up to date. So
like the actual, the
actual initial form. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've seen that there's sometimes confusion on like the permit fee section. And then sometimes I'm finding that people are a little bit confused on what's considered new or reconstructed impervious versus like a mill or overlay project. So Beth and I, with that, when is a permit required document, nothing's been finalized yet, but we are kind of adding in those definitions there to kind of help ease the process as well.
Okay, good. And then my second question is you came in and applied under a certain job description. Is that accurate with what you're performing as far as your job now? Or
Yeah.
Is it very different or is it pretty accurate?
I would say it's very accurate. The only difference is working from home, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Anybody else have questions for Anna?
President Preiner?
Go ahead.
I don't have a question, but a reflection on what Anna did share. And I think she demonstrated well the broadness of the regulatory program. Although we put it under that hat, this interface with a individual landowner or a developer bringing together a project of multiple parcels, we're looking at a lot of things that the district does, whether that be floodplain or public drainage system, or the WMD charges that we've levied onto, special on properties in a specific area. And then that does follow through with the inspectors in looking at the, is a floodplain fill being accounted for? Is the public drainage system corridor protected? Are there interim impacts from the project to the public drainage system as they're doing the work? And so a lot of what Anna shared there, she covered well that this broadness that we have and her position, or a lot of the regulatory positions in the district as a whole, relies on that GIS viewer, we call it, which is tied into our model, and a lot of this groundwork that helps us to understand the landscape quickly and communicate with those folks calling us.
Comments or questions for Anna from the board?
So it's too bad we're not together.
I
Anna,
know.
could you go back to your slide where you are looking at the GIS?
Yeah.
Or the 3 different ways that you look at a project?
Yeah, so I just stopped sharing here, sorry.
And this is just for those of us that have been in this field for a long time, and that how much things have changed.
Oh.
Because I started my career in '88 in a soil and water district, and people were looking at aerial photographs and delineating wetlands.
Yep.
So I'm asking for the GIS. Yeah, this.
I'm sorry, I wasn't sure.
This is amazing. I mean, you have LiDAR, you have what Houston has done. There are no secrets any longer.
Yeah, it's definitely very informative.
Yeah.
President.
Yeah, it's amazing. So congratulations.
President Preiner, Manager Winan, I'll just note that GIS layer does have an assembly of historic photos as well. So when you zoom in, you can quickly jump through any number of years looking to understand the landscape better and see the changes, and so you could put the photo on here as well and and look at it kind of through time.
Mhm.
And we do that, you know. I think folks are often amazed at the changes on the landscape as we urbanize, and even, you know, the public drainage system when it was cleaned in the 50s or what have you, and it was all ag, and now to the tree canopy that exists and those sorts of things.
Anything else for Anna today? Well, with that, I'll say
Madam
thank-
President, this is Manager Wageman.
go ahead.
I just had one comment. I would just like to say that I think this has been a great idea. I have found these thoroughly informative to me as far as learning what the processes are that we don't really see. And I just think it's great. And I mean, she did a nice job. And I think what I've found out through this is the quality of the people we have. So I think it's great. That's all I had to say.
Okay. Anybody else? Well, again, we'll say thank you, Anna, and I'm sure you'll be back up for presentation in a year.
All right, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, everyone.
Next thing on the agenda is staff reports. Anybody have any questions on any of the staff reports today? Then we go to our calendar. Any questions on the calendar? Okay, everybody's good on the calendar. Administrative updates.
Sorry, Pat, I was muted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's my fault. It looks like we're going to do the CAC on August 5th as a board function.
Yeah, I don't know if everybody's going to attend, but everybody's welcome to attend for that. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to attend for most of it. Will it be available on our website or video? Are we going to record it that I could see the recording later?
I
The
would
virtual
think so.
tour.
It's Beth working with that, right?
Yes, President Preiner, I'm certainly in a virtual meeting, we'd be able to record it and have the presentation available.
I'd like to see the virtual tour. I'm just not available then.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Okay. Anything else on that? Administrative updates. We're back to Nick.
Yes, President Preiner, I do have one item to share with the board, kind of an update on our JD3 project taking place over in the Hugo area, as well as some Alino Lakes. We do have Houston Engineering managing the site. We have a project manager and then site folks, as well as Ashley from our office. The contractor did cut down a number of trees that were not intended to be removed.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, Marcy, it was disappointing. Let's see if I can, I was going to share my screen and show you the area. Just a moment, please.
Is he paying for all the trees?
Yeah, here we go. Here it is. I believe you'll be able to see that now. Here's the JD3 branch 3 corridor and where the tree clearing and such is taking place. In this location here, to the east of Onika Parkway, along this ditch, there was a hope to save a portion of the trees. We did have to clean along the corridor, and we were explicit to the contractor that be preserved, the portion, but unfortunately they were cut down. And I did reach out to the city of Hugo and let Brian Bear know that this had occurred. Of course, he's disappointed. A lot of this has to do with our interactions with the communities and those local folks. It's my understanding that in the future, this is an area for a future elementary school, and I think there was a hope for a bit of screening here. So that's the update. You will see, obviously, there's some ponds here that still provide, and as well as just a physical distance between that future school and these here. It'd be good of me to note that we did also reach out to these homeowners associations previously and have these dialogues about the work that we were going to do. So I think, did I stop sharing? I hope.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you much. So that's my update. Chris, I don't know if you have something to add to that or clarify what I had shared.
Sure, yeah, Madam President, members of the board, just a little more information on that. That area that was cleared out by the contractor that we were intending not to work in, that actually is within the public drainage system right of way. So that was an area that the city of Hugo specifically asked us to move our operations onto another side of an existing fence line that was there. And that was ahead of the bid out of the project. They asked us to to move our construction limits so that we could preserve some of those trees along there. And we said, yes, we can move those operations over there and be able to provide our access path there without having it along the existing right-of-way of the public drainage system. And you know, as Nick noted, we had mentioned multiple times to the contractor is in the plans not to work in that area. It was mentioned in the pre-con meeting and other numerous discussions we'd had with them. You know, in completing the work, the contractor, he had multiple crews on site. Our inspector was away inspecting another part of the work that was done on site, and the intermall, she was out there. The one of the other construction crews then went through and cleared that area out on the west side of the fence that, again, we had noted should not be cleared out. So we have talked to the contractor, expressed our concern and disappointment with the management that they've had on site to do that, and of noting it, you know, of course, in our record that this was something that was outside of the contract and you know, potentially damaging to the property there.
Yeah, President Preiner, if I could just, Chris, certainly we're disappointed in the contractor for that, but then I believe we've established some additional protocols on site here as we work through the rest of the project with the contractors. A little bit more walkthrough and establishing clarity on what needs to be done. Is that correct?
That is correct. We're having a daily morning discussion with them and walk through saying this is exactly where you need to be working in this particular day. And again, reinforcing with them that if they want to move on to another section that we haven't discussed, that they need to talk to us before they enter into those areas.
How often was you contacted before that, before the mistake? Was somebody on site that morning and said, yeah, you're good, or how did they? Or weren't they addressed that day or the day after or whatever?
So we do have our contract or our inspector out there on site daily. She was out there again when this was occurring, but not in that particular area of the project as they were working in there. She is in discussions with them routinely during the day on where they're planning to work. And again, and then you know, one thing to also note is the contractor we're talking about, he's actually the subcontractor for the project, so he's working for the contractor we're under contract with. But yeah, we do have daily discussions with them, and again, in this particular case, the contractor, or I should say the foreman that was on that particular crew appears to have misunderstood the plans or forgotten the instruction and went through and worked in that area just as he had on other portions of the system. I don't know if that addresses your question.
Yeah, it addresses it, but it's very disappointing. You can't get trees back very easy.
Yeah.
Madam
Madam Chair, is there a remediation plan when something like
President Preiner and Manager Wynant, I'll note two things, and then maybe Chris can also assist in answering Manager Wynant. Chris, I understand that on site there is flagging placed to note the corridor of the work that needs to be done. And then again, to confirm that this work area specifically is definitively within the district's right of way. So that is good. It's not intended to be suggested that it doesn't matter that they were cut down. We have all this pre-project discussion, obviously, with the city and the landowners, and try to be very attentive to the change that's going to happen on the landscape. And it's often very abrupt appearing, to have whole segments of trees cut down and earth moving and that sort of thing. So certainly we understand how that might be received. And then, Chris, could you assist with any remediation? I'll note that it really depends in my mind as to who might be asking for it. Like I said, I did speak with Brian Baer about it. I understood him to say that they do receive periodically calls from landowners or the homeowners association. We do try and aggregate those with our project manager, which is Garrett from Houston Engineering on this. And so I guess we don't really have a good picture of what the ask might be, but I don't think remediation of some sort isn't out of the picture. But as President Preiner said, if it's a 30-year-old tree, that's not necessarily an easy fix.
So, Madam President.
Go ahead.
All right, so I haven't been down this week to look at the project, but I was the week before. And I thought that the subcontractor was, Chris, will you refresh me his name? What is it? Rock something, isn't it?
Castle Rock.
Castle Rock, yeah, Castle Rock's the same outfit we use for up in the wetland business when we burned them off. And so I thought they did a pretty good job so far. They've stayed pretty much within the right of way. I haven't seen them outside of that, and they've taken down some just really terrifically sized cottonwood trees that are there. So my question about this is a couple of things. One, was that what was taken down mistakenly, as you say, are these cottonwoods that are within the right of way? And two, is the city the landowner that's next door that wanted the screening, or is it public property that's involved there? And if that's the case, then planting trees outside of the right of way for screening in the future, they'll grow pretty quickly there. But the size of the cottonwoods there are just immense. I don't think anything's been cut there since it was last done in 1958. So cottonwoods and box elders are the other tree that I've seen. They're not really a high value tree as such, but so I would say if we had some kind of remediation, you'd put a higher quality tree that's planted in there. For screening, though, if you put ash in there, it'll grow quick. I know that's a problem with the emerald ash borer right now, or the elms, put elms in there or something like that. But my overall impression was that they had done a pretty good job watching them. And considering the way they were handling the size of those trees, it was impressive. And I suggest you go take a look if there's anything left to cut out there, because when they start cutting those 36-inch trees with those cranes and taking a piece of them apart and take them down without anybody in there, they didn't crash the power lines. So I thought they did a pretty fair job on it overall. And if that's just what you cut down with some of those cottonwoods that are in the right of way, and it's on public property or on a, property that's going to be part of the school district's property because they bought 100 some odd acres pretty close to what I see on the map, that's an easy fix. It's not the same as cutting down somebody's pet tree in the yard.
Madam President?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so regarding the remediation of the issue there, and Manager Waller, you bring up a very good point. We certainly wouldn't want to restore conditions to exactly the way they were before, because we don't want to put a short-lived tree out there. And particularly, we have always had concerns about having any trees planted within the right-of-way of the drainage system. So at a minimum, I think that we would look strongly suggest if there is any sort of tree planting to occur, that would occur outside of the right-of-way. I think that would be more appropriate, even though that isn't necessarily where the biggest trees were prior to the project, but I think that would provide the best access in the long term for the drainage system and the avoiding potential for conflict. And I do look at the situation similarly to what we've had previously on projects where a contractor inadvertently busts up a curb or does something else where they're inadvertently damage something on the project, and if it's not within the work limits, that's on the contractor to complete. So I think that the district is well within its rights to ask for the contractor to provide some sort of remediation to this. But again, the trick will be is determining what the most appropriate action would be, and that would be working with the landowner and the city.
So, Madam President.
Go ahead, John.
Go ahead, Marcy.
Go ahead, John.
Oh, sorry, Marcy. So who is the landowner, Chris? That's what I'm asking.
I am actually just going to go look that up right now here.
Yeah.
All right.
President Preiner, as we wait for Chris, the public drainage system there does probably go across two properties. Chris, I think the one to the west is probably the homeowners association. And the one on the right wasn't coming up because of the dual use of my computer right now.
And my question was, is this where we talked about the city sharing the right of way with the ditch and there was a path along it?
President Preiner, Manager Wynant, no, this is not that location. That was definitively city property. It was a park that was held in somewhat of a wilderness state where they have trails through it. There we wanted to traverse that parcel to get to the ditch for access, and then there was a shared interest in the clearing, which would in some degree be in alignment with our corridor, and also they could use that area for a trail then with the wood chips in place from the tree clearing. So this is a slightly different location, but certainly one that we had discussed with the city of Hugo.
That's on the south branch, isn't it? Nick, is what you're telling. Marcy, the ditch goes south and it goes north. And so there's two branches, and they're talking about the north side. It's north of Frenchman's Drive when you drive into Hugo. And the part where the city had, where the wood chips are being hauled, the city's taking a lot of those wood chips. They're chipping all the branches on these huge poplars or cottonwoods, and the trunks are being hauled out, and the contractor's taking the trunks off the properties. But that portion of the city park is on the south branch towards Bald Eagle Lake. That I think is.
And I believe, if I'm looking at this correctly, that the owners would be the city of Hugo and the school district.
So they're both public property owners in this case.
Yep.
That's very good then.
That's good. It might be helpful to have some kind of a general proposal though, if they start to push back on that.
Well,
just, we need to do something to accommodate them.
I agree, Pat, and there's since it's the school district, this could be a science learning issue, if they plant the trees in there. Years ago, the FFAs used to plant trees all the time. They had the planter and a small tractor and a project. If you had somebody come out and do it, they'd order the trees, as I remember. So I don't see why this couldn't be a positive situation.
Yeah. Any other comments on this? Well, Nick, you got the most reaction today.
Okay, thank you.
Leave the trees alone.
Madam
ahead.
President, one more thing related to this. So we have had a lot of feedback from landowners regarding tree removal all the way along the project. There's been a number of landowners that are disappointed with the extent of the tree removal within the right of way. And we have heard some concern that the district had made promises to preserve trees along the right of way. And one thing I just, want to be clear on the record is that, we've had a number of meetings. We've had, 2 public hearings, at least 3 public information meetings. And every one of those meetings, we've been consistent with our message that we have a right of way that needs to be maintained. There are certain instances where we may be able to preserve some trees at the landowner request, but certainly we would make no guarantees to be able to preserve any tree within the right of way. And given that, we've continued to have that message to the landowners as we're going through the project. It doesn't mean that landowners will not be disappointed. We have heard from a number of disappointed landowners on this, but I just wanted to bring that up that, on a related manner, we are hearing that kind of feedback. And though we appreciate hearing that from people, we have to do what we continue to do to manage the system.
Well, one thing about trees is they're visual and they don't know what it's going to look like till they're down. So there's no way you can tell them 100 times that you're going to remove trees and they still think it's okay until they see they're gone. So I get that part, and all we can do is be consistent in our message.
Yeah, but
So go ahead, Mike.
well, I would just remind us all what it was went on in Plain when Blaine cut down some trees. So I think we need to get ourselves in a position to be responsive as quickly as we can, because this could blow up any moment.
So,
Madam President, not only trees, but Mike, as we had the discussion about the creek that went into Baldy Lake, you have those individuals that have landscaped along the right of way. So I don't know how you get this information out to landowners about the requirements of having land that has an easement on their property and make them aware of it. But
well, we certainly go out of the way to do that, Marcy, but like I said, until it happens, they don't understand what we're saying. Right. Major Waller?
Yes, yes, Chris, I've had a few complaints. I've had some telephone calls at home about people that are surprised at what tree removal is. And as President Pryor says, it's ugly. And so there's complaints. I think that the first day I was out there to look at when you're doing parts that were at Lionel Lakes, they left a tree that one of the landowners wanted there. And the other thing I'd point out to remind people, not only that, yes, Blaine was a tough situation, Mike, but so was Fridley when we had that huge cottonwood blow down and we had to find a way to remove that out of somebody's yard. And it was very close to their house to damaging them. And although we're fortunate here that most of the homes are built on these new developments are built far enough away from the creek that the trees are, if they blow down, won't hit the homes. That's the good part. The bad part is I've seen trees that size in my lifetime picked up and moved into the cornfields there, and with the winds that come across there. So I point out to you that we have this other policy over at Fridley where we removed the tree, created a policy over there just to get rid of that problem, and that's a blessing, and that in the long run, I think that the removal of the trees will do far more good than destruction. Even though there'll be some noise. I agree with you, Mike. There'll be some noise, but there's always noise.
Anything else on that? If not, we're going to go to manager's updates. Manager Waller, any updates?
Well, I took care of that one. The other thing is I received a card in the mail the other day from the Rice Creek Watershed District. I don't know, maybe some of you others did too. This one says that Rice Creek Watershed is a local government organization created in 1972 to manage, protect, and improve water resources of the district through flood control and water quality projects and programs. Why are you receiving this postcard? Rice Creek Watershed District wants to hear from you.
We've been successful.
Sometimes
Yeah.
you ask for something you don't want.
Yeah. Your property is within the Rice Creek Watershed District and may be eligible for our water quality grant program. Your input will help us improve this program and look forward to a survey later this summer. So I wanted to mention that. I assume I received this because I own some agricultural land in the city of Hugo, and many of my neighbors did also. But one of the things that Washington County has experienced over the years from the district is that they have oftentimes backed up the water. And when you back up water in the drainage systems or the stormwater conveyance system, one, you lose the capacity of storage there for the valves to go up and down. Second, you create more impervious surface because water is an impervious surface. Third, water will deteriorate the organic material it flows over, and you get dissolved and undissolved phosphorus in it because water is a solvent, and that becomes a water quality program. And in addition, on JD, any of these marshy areas or lowland areas that have been reflooded, you also have the cause of oxygen being lost because the organic soils remove that oxygen from the water, and that becomes an impairment. So on the water quality and water flood issues, those are the things that I've experienced over the years, and I look forward to the district correcting those. So I look forward to the survey this summer.
Go ahead.
President Preiner, if I could, I'll just note that the postcard that Manager Waller received along with many of the rural residents of our rural area was part of the update that Lauren had given at the workshop on July 6th. It was about expansion of the water quality program, and the survey is to elicit how we might have more applicants of a rural nature on the cost share program.
Manager updates. We'll continue here. Wynant.
I have nothing. Thank you.
Bradley.
As four of us know, because the four of us were at the meeting last night, we found out that Bowser is being told to come up with budgets with, I believe, a 10 or 20% cut in their budget. I think that's going to be very relevant to what we plan in terms of getting some funding out of them in 2021, which is nothing. We also had a long and complex discussion of all the infighting that's been going on with regard to how they're going to use the limited funds that are being appropriated to watershed districts. And my takeaway from it is we shouldn't plan on anything.
Yeah.
So Madam President, I would agree with what Mike has to say. And what I got out of it was $1.85 million was available for the eastern part of the Mississippi from Hastings all the way up to Anoka County. That didn't sound like there's a whole lot, although they sound like they were going to distribute it equitably. At least I believe they are. The other thing I caught out of that was that there's a hiring freeze on the state.
Yeah.
So they're missing 4 people at the DNR and 1 at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and in the process, we lost Dr. Sorensen, which was a helpful person, I felt, as a DNR representative in our area. And then finally, there was a new buzzword, that I got, resiliency. I heard that come out. That was, as Mike says, inside baseball talk.
Yeah.
And I'm not exactly sure what climate resiliency means, but I have the impression, my gut feeling is we're talking about volume and rate control because of more rain. I don't know, but whatever this phrase is, resiliency, just draw to your attention, whatever that's going to mean in the future. We need to, the staff will tell
Follow that word.
Yeah.
That's going to tell us a lot as we go.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else? Manager Wagaman?
Yes, I do have something today. Nothing major, but I did have the treasurer's quarterly meeting. Nothing earth shattering there. I think everybody knows where the budget is at. We've talked about it quite a bit, but there was one interesting note that at least I thought it was interesting. We ended up collecting 5% more taxes than we did in 2019, believe it or not, in the same period. I don't see that happening at the next time we get our tax back, but I thought it was just interesting. And that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. I don't have, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. To Manager Wagaman's note there on the tax collection, that will be something in the upcoming packets that we'll use. I think it's a good tool to kind of gauge where we're headed. It helps to demystify that crystal ball of collection, or what might, this is a definitive about what came in, and we'll give you some ideas on that coming forward. Also, the note to the East Mississippi, that is a metro sub-watershed that's been divided in two. So the Mississippi watershed is been divided into the east and west side for just practical matters of size. And the east side is eligible for, what did you say, Manager Waller? I think the
1.85.
Yeah, so $1.1 million, that'll be rolled back that 10 to 20%. So maybe we got 900,000 that we're looking at, and then it'll be divided amongst the watershed districts, those with the groundwater, et cetera. We were looking at roughly $90,000. Now maybe we're looking at, 70, 80 maybe. We'll see what happens.
Not too many projects with that.
Yeah, we'll come back with a project idea with that. Thank you.
Okay, and I have nothing new. I agree. I attended the meeting last night, but we didn't get much good information. Potential short recess. Let's take about a 5-minute recess and we'll jump into the rule revision. Perfect. Everybody good with that?
I am good with that.
All right, everybody take a minute.
Okay.
It's cold in here.